Over the past 9 days, I've done something that I've never done in any other running shoe. I've done all of my easy runs, workouts, and long runs solely in the Asics Superblast. And while many people are calling it a super trainer, I can confidently now call it what I think it really is, a super shoe. I'll admit it, I'm about 7 or 8 months late on this shoe. It's been out for a while. You've seen a ton of videos about this shoe. You've seen all the specs about this shoe. You know it's a good shoe. But over the past, 7 or 8 months, my perception of what I like in a running shoe has changed pretty drastically. Some of that's because of this channel and trying things that I probably wouldn't have otherwise, and others are I think I'm just evolving as a runner. And I really credit two shoes to really starting this off for me. The first one being the Nike Invincible 3, which I still to this day will stand by my claim that I think that is a much better, more versatile shoe that takes it from being a shoe that was soft and squishy and fun for maybe recovery runs to a true performance trainer. And the other one was the Asics Superblast 3, which if you watch my 50-mile review of that shoe, I didn't get off on the right foot with that shoe. I really didn't like it, but I came back to it and I had some really great runs in it, and I got to really enjoy the shoe and really kind of understand what Asics was trying to do with that shoe and really appreciate what that shoe was. And to wrap those two shoes up, I did a comparison video of the Invincible 3 to the Superblast 3. And in the comments on that video, a lot of people were saying the comparison I should really be making is not to the Superblast 3, it's the Invincible 3 to the Superblast, which got me really curious to finally try this shoe out. And boy, I'm glad I finally did. Let's start with the specs on this shoe. Now, this shoe has been out for a while. I'm sure you've watched a ton of videos on it, but I think the specs are important to set the basis for the story about this shoe. We have 45.5 mil of foam in the heel, 37.5 mil of foam in the forefoot, gives you an 8 mil drop. The shoe comes in at 238 grams or 8.4 ounces, which makes it extremely lightweight for a shoe this big. A shoe this big should not be that lightweight, but it is. Now, I'm a US size 9, which is the reference size. I weighed this shoe, and both of them came out at 238 grams. So that speaks to Asics' build quality, which I don't think anyone will dispute. But also, I've never had running shoes that match the specs given for the reference size. And again, I am the reference size at US size 9. And I've also never had running shoes where they match in weight. And that sort of blew me away about the sort of care and detail that has been put into this shoe. The other big part of the story of the shoe is really this upper. I think there is a thread through a few of Asics' current shoes, starting with this shoe, going into the Metaspeed series, and now the Magic Speed 3 actually has this as well, of a austerity, of a minimalism that they apply to the uppers. And this shoe, I think, is incredibly well done with an incredibly simple upper. No unnecessary overlays, a very lightweight but strong material. People have commented that it's a little rough, but actually I really like the way this material feels. And on foot, it feels exceptionally good because it conforms to the foot very well. I think it's a much better upper, frankly, than what's on the Superblast. But I think they're also very different uppers. The Superblast is a daily trainer. That is a shoe that's meant to be plush and comfortable, so that big, soft, cushy upper that's on the Superblast makes a lot of sense. This shoe is something else. This is not Asics trying to make another daily trainer or even a max cushion daily trainer. This is Asics making a super shoe, a dedicated training tool, which I think justifies why the upper is so minimal and so well done and so austere. But I also think a lot of the engineering in this shoe is because this shoe is much more targeted as a training tool and has much more to do with the Metaspeed series than it does the Superblast itself, or even something like the Cumulus, which is the dedicated daily trainer in the Asics line. So besides this very austere upper, I think the other thing that you really need to talk about is this midsole. Now, this is a dual foam midsole. The dark blue foam is FF Blast Plus and the light blue foam is FF Turbo. FF Turbo is Asics's premier racing foam, and the dark blue foam, being FF Blast Plus, is Asics's training foam. Now, I think what really makes this shoe work so well is the proportion of these two foams. We have seen dual density foams. For example, if you think about the Nike Turbo 1 and 2, that had ZoomX and React in it, and it had equal, for the most part, equal amounts of those two foams. And it worked well enough, but I never thought it was ideal. I know a lot of people love that shoe, but I didn't think it was ideal. In this shoe, we have the vast majority of the foam being FF Turbo with just a little sliver of FF Blast Plus. And I think that's doing something very kind of ingenious in this shoe. FF Turbo, for example, if you've ever run in the Metaspeeds, can be a little harsh sometimes. Not in the way that, say, Lightstrike Pro is, where it's just too springy and just very aggressive all of the time. But FF Turbo is a foam that has a little less resiliency, but it is still firm, and it can feel very harsh at times. I think people have said that it is too firm, and it can feel, like I said, very harsh when you're landing on it. But putting this slim kind of sliver of FF Blast Plus, which is a very squishy and bouncy foam under the FF Turbo, I think smooths out the FF Turbo. So on initial foot strike, no matter where you're striking in this shoe, you're getting that soft, squishy, compliant FF Blast feel that makes you feel very rooted into the ground. And by the time you sort of squish through this thin layer of FF Blast Plus, now you're in the FF Turbo. So once you've absorb that initial landing, now you're springing forward. Now the FF Turbo really comes into its own. And again, this FF Blast Plus smooths that out, and this combination of these two works exceptionally well. So running in this shoe becomes really versatile. This shoe does easy running very well. I know other reviewers have said it's not their first choice for easy running, and I would tend to agree with that, but within a marathon training build, which is very specific to really nailing those workouts, including the easy running, I think this is an optimal tool. For workouts, from speed workouts to strength workouts, so from, speed, quick, short reps and speed stuff like 200s, 400s, 600s, road speed work, to hill work, I never thought a shoe with this much foam would work for those really well, but it does, because again, you get that sort of softer, smoother, rooted feeling that smooths out sort of the harshness of FF Turbo, and it works really well for workouts, especially faster workouts. 10 to 5K, even threshold pace in this shoe in those workouts, there's no compromise, and that really blew my mind. And then where I thought this shoe would work out really well on long runs, especially long runs where you need to do marathon pace or half marathon pace, even 10K pace, I expected this shoe to perform really well, but I didn't expect it to perform as well as it does. Those are workouts that I typically will always favor a plated shoe for, but I don't always want to run in a plated shoe. I may want to start off a little easier and then do a progression to get to those faster paces. And the easy stuff doesn't really feel that great in the plated shoe. It also feels like you're kind of wasting the plated shoe, and it only kind of comes into its own when you get into those later miles that are faster. But in this shoe, it carries you through all of that. And even picking up the pace in this shoe, as I said, this shoe being so light, it runs much smaller than it actually is. And I'm not going to say this feels like a racing flat. I'm not saying you have a lot of ground feel in this shoe, but this shoe does not feel as big and as bulky as it should given its size. So to take it on those faster paces, to really pick up the pace, to do accelerations, decelerations in this shoe feels great. And that really shocked me, because that's something I would expect a carbon plated shoe to do really well, with the plate really providing that sort of extra pop with the high stack of foam. This shoe doesn't have a carbon plate, but it still does it really well. And that got me thinking a lot about from a product design standpoint, what this shoe really is for Asics. Now, I'm going to make another video that goes really deep into this product design discussion around this shoe because I have a lot of thoughts and a lot I want to talk about, which is a little bit too much to put into this video. So if you want to see that, subscribe. You'll see that pop up in your feed in maybe a week or two. But for the sake of talking about it here, I think Asics has been really strategic in designing a shoe and trying out sort of a platform of really trying to look at what's next with their Super Shoe series. Like I said, this shoe has more to do with the Metaspeed than it does the Nova Blast or any of the other Blast shoes. And I think that's really fascinating. And I also think that's why a lot of people are putting this in the Super Trainer category, which I would say, okay, yeah, it will fit and live nicely in the Super Trainer category because it's probably one of the better ones if you want to put it in that category. And I think it shows another really important thing to the Super Trainer thing is that you don't need a plate. This shoe, again, has no carbon plate, has no plate at all. This is all just foam. So if you're looking at a Super Trainer, you're still getting some natural foot flex in this. Not as much as you would get in a lower stack shoe or a more flexible shoe or something with, like racing flat heritage, but you're getting enough to actually get another type of training stimulus in this shoe, and that's exceptionally well. And I think Asics is being very strategic in looking at how can they integrate that training stimulus into the Metaspeed or the super shoe end of their range. And that's where this is going to get very interesting. How am I using this shoe moving forward though? Like I said, as of tomorrow actually, I am starting a 14-week marathon build to prepare for New York City on November 5th of this year. And I'm bringing in a bunch of shoes into that build that I never thought I would, this being one of them. And I'm going to work through a lot of stuff in training. And this is going to be a shoe, at least for the initial, the first 4 or 5 weeks of the build, that I'm going to depend on for easy runs and those long runs that have the tempo changes in them. Probably isn't going to be the first shoe for workouts because I have better shoes I'm bringing into the build rotation for that. But again, this shoe can do that with no compromise. And the fact that this shoe has no compromises makes it the probably best marathon training shoe you could possibly buy, which to me justifies the price of this. Because again, I don't think Asics is positioning this as a daily trainer or something that's going to compete against the Nova Blast. They have that shoe. They have other shoes in that area. This is something that is a very specific training tool that I think is pushing the super shoe end of the range. And because of that, I think they've created probably the best marathon build shoe that you can buy right now. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you like this content and you find it interesting, consider subscribing. You'll see more of this pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I'm always appreciative of. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.